Someone who dedicates their life to inspiring people about STEM, otherwise known as a nerd, right? But I'm hoping that what I can do is to also kind of demystify STEM a little bit. And some of the workshops we did this morning, we talked about what STEM is and kind of why it is important. So I don't want to just make this about, look, you know, STEM, everybody should do STEM. I studied a degree in science and had that moment that most people do when they leave university and don't know why they spent the last 4 years doing what they did. And I think that's partly what inspired me to get into talking to people about careers, because I had a year working in a cafe and I felt very overqualified for that. I then worked as a journalist for about 20 years and then sort of transitioned into becoming a business owner. So I think, you know, we're all career changers and we all need to kind of bring that mindset into the future. So I'm going to talk about engaging students with STEM and the importance of diversity in STEM careers particularly, and then just talk about the kind of skills that are in demand now with this whole transformation of work. So this is me. We started a STEM company in 2013 with my co-founder. She has a business management background. I had a science journalism background. And we basically tried to focus on creating content that we thought would inspire a smarter future, not because we think that everybody should be scientists and information technologists, but because we could see that these are really important to some of the challenges that we face today. Climate change is an obvious one. You know, transformation of work is, and IT skills are obviously another. I'm about making people happy. I think life should be about being happy and your job should be something that facilitates that. We had a lot of partners in industry, and thanks to those, we've distributed 1.3 million magazines across Australia, New Zealand and the United States. I was saying in one of the workshops, one of my proudest moments was when the California Correction Facilities ordered 200 copies of our magazine, Careers with Code. I get people who say to me now, because we've been around for 6 years, you know, thanks to your magazines, I read them in high school, and that's, you know, I've now gone through university and I've started my own coding club and I teach kids, I teach girls now today. So it's been really amazing to see that transformation happen. So some of the challenges in looking at work and where work is going today, when I was thinking about jobs and how they've changed, and we feel a bit kind of threatened by this idea of automation and AI and the jobs are going and we don't know what to do. But as Michaela talked about in the beginning of the day, jobs have been changing all the time. You know, when I was a kid, I consumed music by putting on cassettes. I watched films on VHS, and the milk got delivered to my house. None of those jobs are around nowadays, and instead we hear about things like data scientists and DevOps and developers. You know, it's true that there are changes in work. There's also a really big demand for services and health services and for customer experience as well. Basically, the kind of jobs that we're going to need in the future are things that humans are good at. They may well need to work within a workplace where there's a digital element in it, but it's still going to be about people being good to other people or understanding ethical problems. And I think one of the most important things that I want to emphasize is if we don't get this right in the next little while, if we don't get enough people into these careers from different diverse backgrounds, we're going to find that that technology that we're creating is not human technology, is not the kind of technology which we want to have around us and is going to help us. One of the things we talked about in the workshop was also recruitment software. You know, if recruitment software is automatically negating 90% of the people who apply for the job because their qualifications don't match, how are we going to ensure that we're getting, you know, enough diversity of people into those jobs? So STEM is taking off. They have grown 79% since 1990, STEM careers, which is much, much higher than all of the other career areas. And yet STEM enrolments are at an all-time low over 20 years. So this is a kind of disparity and challenge which allowed me to form a business in talking about STEM and why STEM is important. But as I say, I want to really demystify what STEM means. We're not just talking about people who know STEM content. We're talking about, by studying STEM, you're getting the kind of skills that people are looking for. So we don't want engineers to necessarily go on and become more engineers. We do need engineers, but we also need engineers to be working in other roles in the workforce. So understanding that STEM is not just academic, there's all different levels of STEM, and that STEM is involved in everything we do, whether that's trades, whether that's human resources, whether that's law. It's just going to become increasingly part of most jobs, part of accountancy, as we heard this morning from that wonderful presentation from Julie as well. But meantime, for students, this is kind of how they feel, right? You're just bombarded with this curriculum content, which can seem really overwhelming. Everybody feels like they're really bad at maths. Everybody feels like they don't get science. They're just not that kind of person. I grew up in a family where, you know, people were scientists. They were that kind of person. But I was like, but I'm an artsy person. I want to write. I want to be creative. And so I didn't kind of see that role for myself. So it's about it's a massive challenge in how do we take that packed curriculum content and show that kind of relevancy. So how we do it is basically, simple things: design, communication, putting some words up there, what are the different areas you might work in. And the fact that those are kind of not necessarily the areas that you think. It's about fighting disease and disability. It's about making a better world. It's about teaching and not just about working science in science. And also just trying to make the links in the difficult subjects about why the heck you would want to use maths. What do people who work with maths do? How is it used? You might be a nurse. You might be a forensic scientist. You might work in foreign exchange trade. Some of them are obvious and some of them are not so obvious. But really just trying to draw those connections for students. We have a lot of barriers in communicating about STEM and what it is, and the number one is really stereotypes. This was literally what my father's workplace looked like when I grew up. That's the size of the computers, but this photo that I took next to it is actually from an unnamed company who is one of those who are desperate to hire people into IT-style careers. And you can see that stereotype persists. So it's either nerds in the basement or programmers, they call them, with the hoodies, working by themselves, looking kind of creepy. These stereotypes are absolutely still persist. And one of the things that those stereotypes are doing is really driving the gender diversity down in IT careers. It's around about 25% women in IT today. You can also see these when you look at Google Images for a scientist. You still see people working in labs with gloves and coats and glasses. There are increasingly more women. And there are these scientists out there. Sometimes that's what scientists do. But probably 5% of scientists look like this rather than 100% of scientists. Mathematician is even worse. I can't see anybody saying, yeah, that's me. I really want to look like that and work in that. That's absolutely who I am.
There's also no women on that.
There's no women at all. And there's a real focus on the genius, that people who work in STEM are all lone geniuses, which is absolutely not how it works. It works with teamwork. It works with incremental change. It works with a whole bunch of people sitting around together and chatting and having coffee and having a nice time and not looking, slightly weird and unapproachable and white and male. So these are some of the people that we have profiled in our magazines and on our websites. As I say, we've been around for sort of 5 or 6 years, so I've had the absolute privilege of meeting all of these people and hearing their stories. And I just want to kind of quickly run through who they are. Obviously we're trying to promote diversity and all sorts of diversity by this, but when you sort of unpack their stories a little bit, you can understand that it's not just what they look like that we're trying to showcase. Over in the far left there, you can see a couple of Google software engineers. They both studied biology, which is something where girls really are trying to, are overrepresented. They studied biology, they got a little bit into data. They found that Google really wanted people who had studied STEM and thought about working with data, and they both became software engineers. The wonderful guy next to them, Dean Foley, is an Indigenous entrepreneur, and he's all about connecting other Indigenous entrepreneurs and promoting startups and growth in the Indigenous community. The guy next to it, who's, looks like a typical sort of Google software engineer, he was a first in family. No one in his family had ever studied IT before. He was from a really remote regional area. And so he really kind of overcome those barriers to get to where he was today. just showing some of the women working in traditional gaming and animation careers there. And then next to that, there's a couple who are working at Atlassian, which is one of Australia's largest tech startups. It's valued at gazillion billion now. They have an amazing graduate program and they take people from all these different areas as well. We've been lucky enough to work with people in New Zealand. It's a New Zealand coding group, and a great guy who's an Android developer who worked in the US military and had taken those skills that he learned in the military and applied them to working in Android development as well. And the couple down here are all people who have worked in internships in companies and got some great kind of starts in there. There's another Indigenous girl from the Google STEP program. And then the last two are kind of our success stories. That guy who works at Pretty Great, who did the Fruit Ninja app, and there's another guy who's a software engineer and has started an educational startup. But we're really not trying to sort of tell these success stories as much as possible.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah.
Here? Everyone looks young.
Everybody is young. Mostly they are young. And we do talk to our students and find that they want to hear from people who are just starting out. I don't have an age barrier. I think that older people have interesting information as well. And I think the same sort of things that I'm saying to students absolutely apply to adult career changes. In fact, I was saying I'm just about to enroll in a course in design and technology because I've been writing about it for so long that I feel like I should learn some technology too. My own industry, one of journalism and writing, is one that's been disrupted by tech. We started with bloggers 10 years ago. We now have artificial intelligence that writes articles. Disruption is everywhere. But yeah, we do find that the kids want to hear from kids who are within 5 years or so of their age range as well. And it kind of makes them seem like superstars because like, wow, you're working at Google already, you're doing this already. That's absolutely not necessary. It's kind of sometimes you just want to hear, hey, what was your first job? And then what did you do next? And did your ATAR matter? And I've done a lot of these presentations with people like this who then go and talk to the students and they all say, no, our ATAR didn't matter at all. And it didn't matter that we studied this and then we ended up working in that. It was more about maintaining that confidence, maintaining that you had the skills to move into this area and then often luck. Yeah, do feel free to interrupt me. I love being interrupted, just like Julie. So biodiversity, I'm just going to segue a little bit into diversity. As I said, we're talking about gender, culture, regional, socioeconomic diversity. I have heard from a lot of you who are working with people who have great barriers into getting into workforces, with migrant people, with people with correctional facility, with people with disabilities. And we need to show more of these people as well. And that's one thing that I'm absolutely passionate about. I would love to hear from anybody who has worked. I need 5 minutes already, no way. I'm going to talk for now. I would love to hear from people who have talked that. So please feel free to help me tell their stories because I think it's really important to do that. So why I want to talk about diversity is this represents, something that the Google YouTube developers found when they first started YouTube back in 2011, 2012, is that 10% of people were uploading their videos upside down. And the reason that they did that is because 10% of people are left-handed and hold their phones differently. They tend to hold their phones like this rather than this. And nobody on the team at YouTube was left-handed, so nobody picked it up. So diversity can create very simple experiences like that. It can also create really serious experiences like 47% of women are more likely to die in a car crash because of seatbelt injury. And the reason for that is because they had male crash test dummies. We're talking 6 years ago, they only ever tested seatbelts with male crash test dummies. I think that diversity can have that very, very serious consequence. And when I was talking about tech before and talking about that kind of software barriers, there is artificial intelligence software now that is used to scan resumes and do the recruitment process for in-demand careers. Hundreds and hundreds of resumes, and it is skewed towards male resumes because it was trained on the biggest data set, because it gets a bigger data set. AI is only ever going to be as good as we make it. And it's really critical that we get people into those industries now. So how we talk about that and getting people into STEM is through STEM plus X, and where X is the kind of problem, passion, or another discipline. And there's a few of the X's that we do. You know, do you want to, it's not about doing science, technology and engineering and maths. It's like, do you want to create social change? Do you want to solve global problems? Do you just want to get immediate skills and get a job straight away? Are you creative? And then we find people who can fit those areas. So our maths cover star was someone who works in television. We featured an engineering guy who started a surf startup which measures waves in great detail. A fashion student who came from Africa, did a certificate in fashion technology at TAFE and is now working with bioprinting and 3D printing. So that's what I mean when I mean STEM. She uses technology, but she works in fashion. And, you know, that's what STEM careers are. There's a guy who works for Collingwood as a performance analyst. He's a data scientist. He literally runs along the field with the players, giving them real-time information about how well they're running compared to last week. So data science is a lot more than what you think as well. I'll skip through these because I've done obviously far too many. But Health Plus Data as well. This great guy works with data more about the psychology of athletes and performance, so helping athletes feel better about themselves. STEM is accessible at all levels. There are jobs in data entry. You don't need any training. You don't need a degree. You can work your way up through the business to become a data analyst and then a data scientist with incremental salary increases as you go. So the growth areas, just really quickly, obviously data science, artificial intelligence and massively cybersecurity are really, really just growing at an extraordinary rate. In cybersecurity alone, there's a need for 18,000 more jobs in the next 3 or 4 years. Australia can only get 7% of its data science, of its cybersecurity needs at the moment. So there's TAFE courses, there is university careers, there's short courses, there's a lot of effort into fulfilling those roles. Why? Because data is everywhere. Data is in what we watch, data is in our health systems, and if it's unprotected, then we're in big trouble. Some of the skills you would have heard of before, those growth area skills, foundational skills, tech skills, soft skills or enterprise skills. And I think one of the things to really emphasise to your students is that you can get those skills through all sorts of things that you do. You can get it working in a cafe, you can get it raising your children, you can get it, it's listing those skills and having just that little bit of experience in STEM, I think, can really take you very far. So we do these magazines, they do come out every term. You can get them free online. You can get them sent to you, particularly if you work in a school and you say, hey, I haven't got any, let us know. Anywhere between 4 and 50 copies will arrive automatically to your school every term. It may be that your principal has just put them in a box and you don't know where they are. So hit me up and you can find all of them, as I say, in back issues at the careerswithstem.com website. One of the things we really focus on with the website is a lot of quizzes. We find that the students really want to find out what they want to do. So there's a lot of fun quizzes to kind of help them do that. You'll also find some resources for teachers and resources around free coding activities and things as well. You can also download the app and do the same thing. So if you want an offline version of that, you can download that as well. So thank you. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the rest of you for the rest of the day. It's just been so educational for me, and I hope I've demystified STEM a little bit and explained just a little bit about what that is and why that's important, and why we can learn a little bit about getting STEM into our careers discussions. Cool be nerds. Thank you.